Welcome back to BaldHeaded Metal and another episode of Bonded by Metal with Andrew McKay Smith from Scars and Guitars podcast. And again, check his YouTube channel out for a bunch of awesome reviews with the various different metal artists. And today, this is the exactly thing that we want to talk about is this idea of what makes or breaks a band. What are the things that will make them successful or kind of hold them back, whether it's due to their own faults or their own ambitions or something that has to do perhaps with the industry or the music scene and the way it's changed in the world. I have a lot to say on this subject, to be honest. I feel quite passionate about it because of many recent interviews, I keep hearing the same message. And the message is, I'm just here to make music. I've never hoped to become a success or make any kind of money. And I want to open up the floor to Andrew and say, what do you think about that? What is your opinion on, first of all, the statement of I'm just here to make music and not make any kind of money, and obviously what's holding up back some of the bands?
Bands who say that must be saying it because they feel as though they don't have a chance of making money. That's the first thing that comes to mind.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's no point in putting a cap on your ability to earn money. Okay, and there's nothing wrong with earning money from doing something that you love because so few people in the world do it. I was just talking to my wife last night about this very topic. Hey, my job, what is it? Is it adequate? Is it emotionally adequate? Yeah. Can I do it every day? Sure. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
If I was completely financially free and I had no obligations to have a job, would I do it? No, of course I wouldn't. Who would?
Yeah,
I'd be doing this all day, every day because this is my passion. That's why I get up at it's 5:06 in the morning here, and that's no complaint, by the way. I love doing this. I look forward to doing it. That's the point. Love doing it. Look forward to doing it. If you can earn money from it, and I'm talking about a substantial living, not just the typical vagrant artist living in a commune somewhere. Okay,
surviving.
who would? Yeah, and just surviving and scraping the bottom of the barrel. Who's gonna complain about? Okay, I talk about Metallica a lot, but do I envy them for what they've been able to achieve? Dave
Yeah.
Mustaine too. Okay, absolutely not. More power to them for doing what they love, bringing music to the people that is enriching people's lives. We know that because tens of millions of people listen to both of those bands. Don't put it. Don't. I wish bands would stop saying, "I'm only in this for the music. I don't care about money."
I think it's partially that, this idea that they put an artificial cap on themselves, almost afraid to dream. And I
Mm.
think it's very important, especially in something like art, to dream, to go for the sky, to reach for the sky and see where you get to. But the other part of it as well is there's some kind of stigma behind it too, especially for a long time in the metal community. If somehow you want to make money and be commercial, here's that controversial word, commercial, it's automatically somehow bad. Who wouldn't, like you said, who wouldn't want to do something for a living that they absolutely love? And I say this because I'm fortunate enough to say I do two things that I love. I'm a personal trainer and I love it with all my heart. And I want to die being a personal trainer. And the second thing is, yeah, I started YouTube not knowing where it's going to take me, but my ambitions was always, it would be great to create a channel where A, I can make money, B, I can do something that I love, and C, where I don't have to do any kind of predatory tactics to my listeners and viewers. I can do something from the bottom of my heart. And if they respond to it and they connect with it, I happen to also get paid for it. That's the perfect combination of things. And I think they create A, the bottleneck, B, also just there is a stigma. Do you feel like there was always like this stigma, like don't be popular, or it's cool to be like off center and not the thing that everybody's talking about?
You're right. That certainly was the perception, and it still is in a lot of cases. But it's only something that afflicts rock and metal, isn't
Hmm.
it?
I
When you
think
look at
so.
hip hop, they're all about the bling and the stupid cars and the lifestyle and about showing off how much money they've earned courtesy of record sales and appearances, etc.
Yeah.
No idea why it afflicts rock and metal, but I have a feeling it comes from rock's working class roots. Okay, it's something where you weren't supposed to show off your success. Whether it was the Delta Blues greats who started rock and roll, right the way through to rock and roll as it evolved from Britain, heavy metal, sorry, I should say, from Britain in
Hmm.
working class Birmingham, okay, where all these fellows were working in factories like Tony Iommi, the famous story about him losing his
Of course.
finger in an industrial accident. I mean, the guy worked it in a primary industry industrial role. Okay, whilst the band was emerging, and certainly well beforehand. So, look, the argument is built on the false premise that you should suffer for your art as well. That's the other thing, and to an extent, I understand that. I understand a band's perspective these days, that by saying we're doing this for the art, we love the music, and we don't really care about money, it's really a throwaway statement. I understand that bands are trying to tap into something to make themselves feel more authentic, but I hope they don't mean it.
I 100% agree with you, because I don't think there's anything wrong with being it a business and a passion at the same time. You can blend the two together. And I think it's also partially due to a lot of people who do start bands, they're very young and they haven't really experienced the working life and the kind of what kind of pressures is going to put on you.
100%, mate.
That routine of doing the same shit every single day, and just imagining for a second that you could potentially be doing something that you love for the rest of your life and doing it as a business. Now, do you have to go to the extent of, I can't think of a particular band when I feel like they go too far. It's like, dude, like Metallica, I criticize. I'm like, I think they repackaged the Black Album 40 fucking times trying to shove it down people's throats.
Yeah.
It's like, but why not? Sell your t-shirts. People are not going to buy your things if they don't love you and they don't respect you and they don't follow you. Just don't be predatory about it. I've always did this in personal training, and this has been my philosophy in YouTube, is just be 100% uncompromisingly yourself. And people gravitate towards that, and they'll support you just for those things because they can relate to you. But I was going to add another thing on top of it. Something that people don't talk about as much in metal is charisma. I think charisma is quite important. What separates a band that can have sound popularity and that make it to these high levels. The ones I thought about, Dimebag Darrell, something that's not metal, Iggy Pop, super charismatic. They're just figures. You're just absolutely encapsulated, want to see them every single time they're on the screen.
Dimebag's such a great example because he was never going to be anybody else in the lifetime that he lived. Okay, what a wonderful example right there. Here's a bloke who's brought so much happiness to people. He probably didn't look in his bank accounts maybe ever. He just had that. I mean, I'm not saying he's stupid and he's a dumb metalhead, because he was far from that way, but he was just beyond it, wasn't he? He was just, here I am, dude. And he was a cartoon character come to life, playing the most extraordinary guitar lines. I still get chills listening to so many of his solos. And you can never be Dime. Nobody could be Dime except for the one man who was, but you can emulate characteristics of that. And it doesn't mean you turn into that and you dress up like him or what have you, but you take that free spirit attitude and you apply it to something that you're currently doing. And we'll stick to the music, okay? Whatever sort of music you might be playing, okay? Bring that same free spirited attitude. I read and I do follow somebody called Esther Hicks, who talks about this something called the vortex, aka the law of attraction. Now, it's not this hoodoo hocus pocus bullshit that I think a lot of stuff out. When we talk about law of attraction, a lot of people go, "Oh my God, there's that book, The Secret."
Yeah, of course.
These sort of things come to mind, and I'm thinking, if you want to be rich, just think rich thoughts. No, it doesn't work like that. Okay, you've got to have a goal, and then you put credible steps in place to work toward it.
Yes.
Okay. Now, if you want to make money from playing brutal death metal, probably not going to happen. Okay. And the bands who play brutal death metal, they know that. Okay. I'm sure they know that. And if they don't, well, here's your reality check. If you're playing slightly commercial music, well, okay, if you're playing almost any rock and metal at the moment, you better have a pretty solid angle and understand the social media algorithms like we've spoken about so much. Okay. But we are in this episode here, we're talking about that self, what would you call it? The willingness for bands to publicly proclaim they are not in the business to make money. That aspect of it. Here's the tip: just don't bring it up.
I'll say something else, man. I'll add to it and disagree with you. I've recently become of the opinion, because I must have wasted 10 years of my life doing something out of college because I couldn't get a job. I could not. I graduated post the recession in 2008. Could not find a marketing job. I'm a marketing major. I went to retail. I've interned for 2 years straight for free for different companies. It was just horrible. And I started thinking about this idea of really believing that anything is possible. Once I became a personal trainer, I realized what the average cap was for a trainer. I'm like, why the fuck do I have to be average? And I literally asked myself that question. And I believe if bands do the same things, like, so what if I play brutal death metal? Why don't I? Cannibal Corpse made it. Other bands made it. It's like if Orbit Culture can break through, for example, great example. They're only with 2 albums in, gaining enormous amounts of popularity in an extreme metal band. Infected Rain. It's possible to do it. I think they just have the belief that it's going to happen. I feel like the belief, they've done multiple studies where the power of belief has the power to heal, has the power to manifest certain things in you, not like magically, but for some reason, because you're working towards it, just by matter of opportunity, things fall into your place. You just interact with somebody who might have known that little piece of information. For example, you letting me know that I can contact labels to get albums early. I didn't know that I could do that. But just the connection that we had together, because I was ambitious to I should collaborate with somebody, you gave me that piece of gold information. And I think it's very transferable to musicians as well. As no, try harder, talk to more people, go to different places, interact with others, really put yourself out there in the best possible way to succeed. And I believe to what extent is arguable, but you will succeed and you will make money and you can make a living out of it. And in that way, I'm very naive and hopeful.
Yeah. Well, I think it's good to be naive and hopeful, because you don't get too disappointed then, and you're carrying a bit of lightness of spirit with you. I'm reminded of what Stuart Wilde, the great modern day philosopher who left us in around about 2013 or 14, this mortal coil I'm talking about. He says, when you're doing, or words to the effect, I'm paraphrasing, when you're doing what you're meant to be doing, people start coming at you and you got to find a way to bill them, he says. Got to find a way to bill them. Got to find a way to make the transaction happen so as the money ends up in your bank account. Look, if you're meant to make money from playing music, I also believe I'm a bit of a fatalist, as people are kind of may be able to work out through some of my comments here. Okay, through Esther Hicks and Stuart Wilde, and just put it out there into the universe. Are you really meant to be playing music? Okay. An example of that I'm going to use is not really metal, definitely rock or certainly grunge, Daniel Johns from Silverchair.
Mm-hmm.
Now, he was, in my humble opinion, he was Australia's, he probably has been, alongside of Michael Hutchence from In Excess and a few others, our greatest rock frontman ever. How many real rock albums did he release, though? Maybe 2. How many albums are in his canon? Maybe 8 or 9, I think, something like that. I know I gave up after the first album. Mm-hmm. Why did they give up after the first album? Because they fucking sucked. Okay. But he was kissed in the ass by a rainbow, this guy. Okay. Yeah. He had rock star looks, rock star charisma, the whole thing, and decided to throw it in the bin and follow this punk thing of wanting to look like as though he was I think he is a tortured artist. I think he sort of chased that initially, and then he actually became that. And Nick, who was it? Kevin Caveman Shirley, the fellow who ended up doing the Iron Maiden records. I think he still does the Iron Maiden records, but ended up producing the first Silverchair album, Frog Stomp, in a recent Daniel Johns podcast. Mm-hmm. Daniel Johns has his own podcast at the moment, said that he never quite reached his potential. And I totally agree with what Kevin says there, because there's that, and here's a key topic, that's self-consciousness. If you're playing rock and metal, especially if you're starting out, and you made a really great point before, sorry, I'll make my first point, don't be self-conscious. Yeah. And you made a really good point before, okay, just be you, okay, because I'm 43, I mentioned that a couple of times again on our show, but I've got mortgages, got kids. Life can be fucking tough out there, people. Okay. Yeah. And if you're 21 and 22 and you've got this tremendous talent to create music, follow it. Yes, you might have to do work at McDonald's and Hungry Jack's or Wendy's or what have you. You might have to do that sort of stuff in order to get by. But if you're not actively chasing the dream, you're not putting yourself into a position where you can gain financial freedom courtesy of chasing a dream. And if that's music, you do not know how lucky you are.
I'll point something that has to do not with music particularly, but in just success in general. is this idea of, I saw a documentary that most really successful people that you see fail multiple businesses, multiple times. The
Yes.
difference between them and the person who just never made it is they try for the seventh time until something clicks. Sometimes it just takes a long time, right? How many bands have you listened to? Sometimes they may create all these side projects and sometimes they just don't click. And then this one thing that they create is like, whoa, he made that? Wow, I didn't expect that from him. Because they just keep trying. I respect, for instance, I listened to the new Annihilator album. I can't say I'm like amazed by it, but man, he keeps going. Jeff Waters is just a beast. He really believes in his music. He's collaborating with all these people. You can tell he's having fun, and people resonate with it. Maybe not me anymore, but I respect it totally. Listen to the album, like I know where his mindset is, and I love him for it.
Yeah, that new song. Well, no, it's not a new song. He's redone Couple Suicide from 2007.
Yeah,
that's killer. I'm an old Annihilator fan. Like I'm talking Alice in Hell era.
Alice in Hell, yeah, was great.
I'd even call myself a Gen 1 Annihilator fan. In other words, I stopped listening to them after the second album. That's how long ago that was. So I distinctly recall a fellow that I was at work with telling me that Annihilator had a new in-market album in 2007. And I went, huh? They're still around? Here we are. What's that? 13, 14, 15 years ago. 15 years ago. My God, that is now. Yet he's probably just released his strongest track. That's a great example you bring up because that song has the ability, Couple Suicide, to cross over because it's not really a metal song.
Yeah.
And that's what I love about it. It's just Jeff going, you know what, fuck it.
And then he got Dave Lombardo, Stu Block, he got Angela Gasso on that song. It was awesome.
Danko Jones is singing on it too. That's that great voice you can hear on the Danko. Yeah, I've had one conversation with Danko. He's a good bloke, actually. Bit of a lefty, but you get that. But he's got a great voice and just a killer vibe that he brings to that song there. I hope like a HBO or one of those shows sort of pick up on that song and make it their introductory music as you're waiting for the rolling credits. Yeah, because it sounds like soundtrack music, doesn't it?
Like I said, I finished listening to it. I came away respectful, and like almost like, man, he really does what he loves. But the other part of it is I want to mention what we talked about last time in this context. And this idea of you can't always, as a musician, I believe you can't always just do the things that you want to do. The music, the writing music, the touring, the talking to fans. That's great. And we love it as fans, but you have to be a content creator. You have to utilize social media. You have to be a businessman. You have to network. You have to do interviews that you don't want to do and really chat. Like I talked to a band before yesterday. They haven't even released their first EP. That's how new they are. I've listened to the EP. Nobody knows about them yet. They're fucking great. It's a Finnish black folk metal band. They're fantastic. Nice. And I told them, like, guys, if you really put yourself out there, people are going to love it. I can't see not somebody liking this. It's like, it was that good. And they were just like, they had such a hard time talking because it was their first interview.
Yeah.
And I'm like trying to extract information out of them. And it's like, they have a good heart, but they also have a lot of things to learn that's beyond the music that to make themselves that much more successful, I think.
Yeah. I get hit up quite a bit by bands that don't really have their shit together. And I've got to say, I don't let them on the show because of the reason you just pointed out. You end up it's such a great example. You end up trying to pull information out of them and you listen back to it. And it just sounds like a one-sided weird thing. And it's not going to be enjoyable for the listener. It has to be like what we're doing, an exchange of ideas, especially when you're turning an interview, because they're not really interviews, are they? They're conversations.
The conversation.
When we're doing what we're doing. And if bands don't go along with that journey, then I don't really see the point. But to your point that you raised there, that we've spoken about in a previous episode around understanding social media algorithms and all of that sort of stuff. Yeah, guys, get busy. Okay. If you're in a band and you think you can just sort of perform in a rehearsal studio and occasionally play at whatever your city's equivalent of my King Lear's throne is, which is like a 60-person venue. Mm-hmm. Take some social media marketing courses, just get some understanding and awareness. It is extremely hard to understand how to game those systems, not game the systems, but how to understand how to fit into the systems and therefore get your band a chance to get more than say 3 or 4 listens on Spotify. My understanding is the vast majority of music on Spotify and Apple has no listens whatsoever.
Yeah.
Okay, no listens at all. Same thing with books. Same thing with videos on YouTube. It's just filler. It's just bullshit. It's just stuff people are putting up there, and they're just hoping somebody's going to grab it and go, "Oh, this is brilliant." No, it's a very flat environment in 2022. Okay, streaming has the internet, first of all, for reasons that we've spoken about a lot, has obliterated the old marketing paradigms, and streaming has gone even much further. Okay, so you can release music from Iceland, and a fella in Chile can listen to it the next day, no questions at all. But how does that fella in Chile know that your music is out there? Okay,
Exactly.
so you've just got to put credible steps in place to get your music out there, and to be aware that you're competing with tens of thousands of other bands, but it's not even about music these days. Even if you're in music, even if you're in a band, you're competing for people's attention. What grabs their attention? Joe Biden fucking up yet another thing.
Yeah.
You know, like I'm talking, my point is
Like
that you're
tabloids.
competing, tabloids, you're competing with everything. You're not just, if you're in Guns N' Roses, it's not like back in 1988 when you're competing with Guns N' Roses or competing with Metallica or what have you. You know, these days, if you're in a band, you're competing with a car commercial, for God's sakes.
Yeah. But see, I thought a good example of what you should, how enthusiasm that I've seen is I've had a guy reach out to me who has a band in Pakistan. And it's, I think, their
Nice.
second, they're starting to produce their second album, and he's excited. I guess he saw the channel, he liked my style of reactions. And he just reaches out to me. He's like, "Hey, would you do a reaction to my song and check it out and see what it's all about?" That's what you're supposed to do. He's building a good relationship with a person that, as we grow together, we expose each other to, more to people that potentially are exactly your audience. And I listened to the music. It was fucking awesome. It's like 80s thrash metal. And I thought it was awesome. I'm like, I just told him, how about you get on the interview? Let's chat about it. And that's it. It starts the roller coaster for the both of us. And I've had many comments on my channel saying, "Oh, are you gonna just react to popular songs? Is that all you're gonna do?" I'm like, and I sound right. I'm like, look, I'm gonna pick popular songs, yes, because that's what's gonna help me grow the channel. But I don't forget about the smaller bands because I have to do my part. And I want to pick things that I like along with some of the things you guys request. I have to find a sweet balance of things. I don't want to just become one-sided. And I also realized something, again, being a personal trainer. Now, this is going to sound really weird. Maybe you can relate to this, maybe you can't, is you don't have to be the best to be successful. We keep thinking about Megadeths and Slayers and Lamb of Gods. Let's be honest, most people are never going to make it to those levels. Amorphous, but there's nothing wrong with being your level of best and making a living from it and being able to make a living from it. I had such a complex as a trainer that, am I good enough as this other guy? I'm like, this other guy has 15 years of experience. I just started. I still have room and space to be in this kind of sphere of trainers, and I have something to offer. Perhaps maybe not what this guy can offer, but I can offer my thing and make a living on it. And as I grow smarter, as I get more knowledge, as I become a more seasoned trainer, I can be like him more and more each day. But in the process, you're still making a living on it.
Yeah, you certainly don't need to be the best in order to make a living out of things. There's no doubt about that. I think the best bands we've never heard.
Yeah.
Tom Morello from Rage Against the Machine was quoted as saying that he constantly gets asked about who is the best guitarist out there, and he says, "Well, if you're talking about the public domain, I couldn't tell you his name because I saw him play in a bar in Russia 15 years ago." Okay, so that's the thing, is that's that, I mean, that interview might have been done in 1996 or 1997. So when you grew up in Russia, I know that. I mean, growing up in Russia as a guitarist in the early 80s would have been bloody difficult.
Yeah.
So that fella probably never had a chance of getting out, but someone noticed him. A very important and influential guitarist noticed him. Look, you made another great point there. I think it's important to have doubt. You know why? Because it's like questioning your faith if you believe in God, because then you start looking for more meaningful ways to connect, more tangible ways to connect with the divinity, if you like. And therefore, through that process, you're able to work out exactly what you're able to do with yourself, with the God-given talents that you've got. Okay. And work out how to make money. This is even beyond music. And you've talked about your personal training there. It's just I had to, when I stepped out of my career at a telecommunications company, because I was just burnt out, seriously burnt out, and at a point where if I kept on going in that job, I couldn't. There's no point in saying if I'd kept on going, because I just simply couldn't. My boss, who is a very good mate of mine, still just says, "Mate, I get it. You're cooked. You're cactus. You're done."
Yeah.
Okay, but so one of the guide stone, or the true north that I said is, okay, I'm a writer. Okay, I'm someone who writes. Okay, I've always sort of written in the background, writing. You know, my book only came out a couple of days ago. This sort of thing. Just I want to be in a position, God, where I'm writing. That's it. Okay, and work toward that. So from there, it was revealed I had to go back to uni if I wanted to be serious about pursuing this career as a writer. But what sort of writer? Okay, so came out a journalist, and I thought I was going to go into news media. Didn't like it. Don't like the way the media is headed, so I don't want to be part of that engine. And it's fairly, our satanically minded audience, close your ears now, but actually work for the church, the Uniting Church, the Presbyterian Church in Australia these days. And I think it's a great thing, because it's even though it's a Christian organization, it's fairly secular in its outlook. In other words, it doesn't matter what background you come from, you can work there and also be part of the congregation, funnily enough.
Yeah.
It might sound contradictory, but the church these days, it's about welcoming anybody and everybody who just wants to connect with divinity. Okay, the means is there, if you like. But my point is, I wanted to be a writer. Okay, I believe God made the path clear for me. I just said, my goal was big, be a writer. I didn't say I want to be a writer for just picking a company here, McDonald's or Coca-Cola. I didn't say that. Okay, that's probably not going to happen, because that goal is too narrow, but it was a big enough goal. And I think you've said something very similar there, where you talked eloquently about your personal training and your pursuit of personal training as well.
Perseverance in general is such an important thing, especially in music. I would say hip hop and both heavy metal in their origins were shunned by everybody. Everybody tried to shut down rock and roll, blues, jazz, rap. All these big major music movements are always been stepped on by the generations before. And it was the perseverance of each of these people say, fuck you, I'm going to make it. I'm going to make the music that I want. And then people slowly connect and build this whole audience on it. Heavy metal music, that was supposed to die, right? It was supposed to die in the 80s, just like disco, just like rock and roll and all these other genres. It persevered. Hip hop was supposed to die in the 90s and 2000s. It's the most popular genre in the world now, with crap and good stuff obviously mixed in there for both of these genres. Perseverance is such a good quality to have for anybody, and especially in music, where your road is difficult, especially now with all the restrictions, but it's not impossible. And that's why I say I'm going to be this hopeful, optimistic person. Like, I had this moment in YouTube where I was doing it, and people, this common misconception is like, why would you think I put in 30 extra hours of YouTube just for fun, for a hobby? It's like you do have to ask yourself that question. Of course, I want it to be something more, not compromising who I am, but of course, I want it to be something more. And I'm working towards it and persevering, despite not being able to do things that I want, resting or whatever it may be. The way you're waking up in the morning to do this podcast in the hopes of it growing more and just building this family of people that will be united in one in this idea of that you're doing.
Yeah, the only addendum I'll add to that, or the thing I'll add to that, is that I think intelligent perseverance. Because I'll share something quickly with people. Being a musician, you partner with all sorts of people to get your music out there. I'm talking about live performances. So I actually do get paid when I play. That's the thing. So you've got to be very careful about who you partner with, because that's your brand. And playing the guitar, and I worked with one guy who, my guitar, I'm a bass player, right? So I'm a bass player playing guitar. So I'm very basic on the guitar, but it sounds like what it's meant. It sounds like a version of Summer of '69 and Oasis's Wonderwall. Okay, so I can play. I'm not saying I can't play, but the fellow that I'd partnered with, he's one of those guys that had just lost it, meaning that at one point in time, he was a great singer, great front man, but he was getting on a little bit in age. And sometimes with musicians, you turn up to a rehearsal studio and you listen to them play and you think, holy shit, you've lost it. There you go. And I'd made up my mind that I was going to partner with this guy regardless. Okay. And talk about divinity. I still do session work. and I was doing a lot of session work back then. I turned up to a session and I worked with a guy. We got along famously, and he said he was looking to start a duo with somebody. And this guy's a fucking awesome singer and all the rest of it. What do you think I did? I ignored him and went with the other guy that I'd already stuck to. Why? To your exact point, I wanted to persevere with this guy. I wanted to prove a few people wrong that were telling me not to partner with him. Did I end up with egg on my face? Abso-fucking-lutely. Okay, he sucked. And we got very bad feedback from venues. I called up the other guy, Ian. I said, mate, it's not working out with the other guy. Come on board. He goes, I didn't think you were ever going to ask. Next gig we did, got great feedback. Okay, so take the cues and signs that come along. Don't persevere just through sheer bloody mindedness like what I did there, because I shouldn't have done that. It was a massive lesson for me, that situation there. Sometimes God puts things in your way that you're meant to trip over, and take notice of them. Do that.
Yes, learn from your mistakes and learn from the mistakes of your peers. And at the same time, again, it's like this idea of being a tank and just moving forward, finding a different path. There's this example in my life I always quote from my grandfather, because he grew up World War II street kid, surviving on the streets, pickpocketing, surviving. So he's a survivalist, hands down. And when he would tell me, whenever I would cry about something wasn't working the way I wanted, he was like, look, Joseph, knock on the door. If they don't open the door, you climb through the window. If they don't let you through the window, you climb through the roof. But you find a way. You don't stop. You keep trying to find a nook in the cranny to get yourself through. Because once you do, then if there's something there, people will pay attention to you. And I've always remembered that. And it's been kind of my main driving force creating a YouTube channel, again, all with all these kind of intentions of, I honestly want to build a community for heavy metal. I don't think there's enough on YouTube. There's a lot of superficial things going on, or the big magazines that we're all used to, but just to have an honest conversation, we can honestly express ourselves with what's bullshit, what we like, what we dislike. I honestly have this vision in my head to kind of make it a reality. I don't see a lot of people even collaborating the way we do. And it's kind of ridiculous. How is that not happening? Why is every other medium, like comedians are really taking advantage of that? Why aren't we doing more of this? We should be really expressing ourselves as fans of music and promoting the music that we love in the best way that we can. At least on my level, I'm doing the best that I can to promote every musician that comes on the channel, so they get just maybe 2 more eyes on them.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that we had to connect given our thousands of kilometers that separate us. Okay, the internet's made all of that redundant. I get that. But even people around me, I was thinking, when you hit me up, I put it out there. I wanted to partner with someone and do something like this. Lo and behold, in a short time after that, you contacted me. And look, I understand that you'd asked a few other people and they didn't get back to you and the like. I don't know what it is about people in the metal community and not wanting to collaborate and form communities, but it's definitely a thing. I haven't experienced it too much because I started my venture from the perspective of I'm just going to do this and see where it goes. I'm not going to have too much ambition outside of just wanting to have killer conversations with guys like David Vincent from Morbid Angel, hopefully Trey from Morbid Angel coming up. I think I'm 630 interviews, conversations in now that I've posted to the website. There's far more than that I've actually done. There might be even 700, but when I say only, I've posted the 630 because the others were turned into yarns and some of them just never made it because they were with local artists that, for all the reasons that we spoke about earlier, the conversations are just stilted, so I didn't put it out there. But yeah, you're approaching things with an open spirit and an open heart and you're wanting to share. And I hope that the people that find this, okay, because I think that's what it's all about these days. We're trying to push it up through the great work you're doing with the conversation, the reaction videos, the people that find this. Okay, we hope they get something out of it and they're enlightened and they're tuned into some of the things we talk about. There's some fellas in the United States that I love listening to, the fellas on the Classic Metal Show. Have you heard of that?
That metal show, or it's called Classic Metal Show?
It's called Classic Metal Show.
No, never heard of it.
So Chris Aiken and a fella called Neely, I don't know what Neely's full name is, but those guys just riff about anything. Most of the time, a lot of the time, they're not even talking about music. So they're talking about just whatever comes into them, whatever topic is pertinent of the day. Of course, they're talking about some music in between it. And that's what's so great about it. It's like a current affairs show for metalheads. And why is it so successful? Well, why have they been able to obtain success in their way? Because it's authentic.
Yes. And even if it takes time, even if it's I've always kind of traveled belief that don't take the easy road just because it's easy. Especially like I am in personal training, I'm unwilling to compromise certain moral values because I feel like I've been mistreating my client. I believe the same thing when I do the YouTube channel, and I know it's sometimes even my wife looks at me is like, Jesus Christ, why you think it this way? But I stand a certain moral ground where it's I'm not gonna say the things they want me to say if I don't feel it. Even like I remember interviewing Dagobah's Shotter, and as he's talking and he's suggesting whether I like the album, I didn't say yes. I said in the most possible polite way, saying it wasn't the one I liked the most. I liked one of because I feel like that uncompromising who I am is so important to the whole thing. Because in a lot of social media, there's a lot of smoke and mirrors. And I think for musicians, I think for us content creators, authenticity is going to be refreshing. And it is to me, at least. When I watch somebody who's very authentic, it's just so lovely to watch and listen to. And that's what kind of gravitates me to listen to some of your interviews, what gravitates me to listening to other people doing reactions to certain bands, and the other ones where you can see they're there for views.
Yeah. Yeah, I rarely get negative feedback from fans, people who are listening, especially fans of. What my most successful podcast conversations on YouTube by far and away are with the members of Cradle of Filth, and I know they're not one of your favorite bands, and certainly these days I haven't listened to them as a fan in at this point decades. Okay, but my interest centers on them in the 1990s. The Cruelty and the Beast lineup and that sort of thing, and the albums that are around about there. And I get so much great positive commentary and messages to my direct messages, this sort of thing, from people who've listened to the conversations. And it's not about me, and I'm not saying it is, but they say, wow, nobody's done that before. Okay. Nobody's thought to ask Stuart Anstis, the guitarist in the group for 5 or 6 years there, these questions. I don't know why the mastheads such as Metal Injection, Louder Sound and the like, why they don't want to get to the bottom of these things. Okay, they're all of the popular bands that are out there, whether it be Five Finger Death Punch or whatever the most popular bands. Okay, they give them plenty of copy because, of course, it's got to drive people, clickbait articles, this sort of thing. But do something to honor the music as well. Be authentic in that way. Okay, and allow people, if you've got a platform, and this is speaking more broadly here to the media outlets, allow people to understand why these bands were so great in the first place. Okay, by asking the former musicians, like. I don't know this, but I wonder. I don't know how many times this may or may not have happened. I'll never know. Of course, I won't. But Chris D'Agamo from Queensryche, one of the greatest guitarists in rock and metal ever. Okay, how many interviews has he done since he stepped out of that group? Which I think it's been about 25 years now. Could be wrong. Someone's going to correct me. But he's been out of that group for that long. Queensryche have gone on to be a pretty good band, it must be said, but they aren't the band that they were when they had Chris D'Agamo, who wrote all of those killer cuts. Like I think Silent Lucidity was his, if I'm not mistaken, their huge hit. But he's someone with a story to tell. I'd love to hear what he's got to say. Same thing with one of your, well, you couldn't call it compatriot in that way, but the fellow who resides in your great city there, Vito Bratta from White Lion. One of the great modern rock and metal guitarists, probably just behind Van Halen in terms of all time in a lot of ways, because his playing took the Van Halen template and just stepped it up a notch. Okay, you can never be Van Halen because, like Dime, there's only one.
Yeah, there's only one.
But there are people who sit just adjacent. Okay, so why aren't these media outlets saying, "Hey, open call out. We want to interview Vito. We want to interview Chris D'Agamo. We want to get to the bottom of some of these things here, and we'll give him complete editorial oversight." Well, like what I do with the Cradle of Filth stuff, like with Paula Lender, who was in the group for years, didn't want to. I interviewed a member of Cradle of Filth about Cradle of Filth, didn't want to talk about. We certainly spoke about Cradle of Filth, but he wanted me to edit out everything to do with Cradle of Filth because he's not happy with it. Okay, I'll do that. That's the authenticity that you've got to bring to these things. And, just trying to bring things full circle around, what's this got to do with trying to make money? Well, it all comes down to just being effective, being authentic. As Stuart Wilde says, do what you do and people are going to come and then find a way to bill them. You've just got to figure it out. It's like unlocking the Enigma code. You just got to figure out how to make money from what you love. But there is no point in saying, don't sabotage yourself. Don't snap your
100%.
Achilles heel by saying, I don't want to earn money from this, because I'm sorry, and I'll say it, that's just dumb.
It's like we talked about. It's a confidence thing, and it's your own insecurities, and we can sympathize on that level because we all have insecurities, but it's their insecurities. And the way I'm going to close out kind of today's podcast is, again, very hopeful for anybody who's listening to. I know there's a couple of people who are in smaller bands that might be listening to this podcast, or for example, somebody just in their regular life trying to get something done, whether they're young, old, failed, or their first thing that they're trying, is go into it with both of your feet forward and really commit to this full thing. Don't let anybody tell you how you should be doing that thing that you love. And there's nothing better in the world than doing something that you absolutely love and getting paid for it. It's the best feeling in the world because nobody can take that away from you. And that'll be kind of my closing positive statement for the podcast.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, I think the most I've been paid for doing podcasting is about $200, or in the 4 or 5 years that I've been doing it, and that's because I got some commission work when I was working for Queensland Writers Centre.
Mm-hmm.
But I've never said once I don't want to earn money from doing this. Okay, I would love to earn money from doing it, but I'm just realistic about it. There's that key word. And I'll wrap things up myself too, mate. Another killer topic. I hope everybody out there enjoyed listening to it. If you've got any comments, we love comments. We want you to comment. We want you to interact. The key word here is dialogue. Don't just leave on a burner account a comment, you guys are fucking shit, and run, okay, because it'll just be deleted or what have you. But if you've got any commentary, or if you've got some perspective, absolutely we welcome it. And you guys those people who watch this show regularly, you see me in the comment section. I do try to engage with people, so I'd love to hear from more people, as I'm sure you would too, mate.
And again, if there's any musicians here now that have been kind of struggling and going through their own tribulations, let us know what kind of things you've been struggling with as well. And I'll open up this kind of doorway to anybody who wants to share anything of their personal life. It's open. And guys, make sure to enjoy the rest of your day. To all of you guys, stay safe out there and keep it metal.